when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore. But some days I sit and wish I was a kid again.
Make it last forever. Girl, you know. That was our song, girl. You remember that? What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Cinematic Soul Podcast, the place where we talk about movies and look at them through a different lens and a different light, the way that they need to be and deserve to be talked about. I like to break down the beauty, the struggle, the joy, and all the flavor that Blackness gives us in these stories. And today, if you couldn't tell already from that little intro I did, today I want to take it back to the year of 1999. Year of Juvenile, baby, and Destiny's Child with the matching bandanas and army prints and all that jazz, and me trying to figure out if my FUBU boots are the right size. Let's take it back there, right? And with that, I want to talk about none other than one of my favorite top 5 movies of all time, The Wood. And what's The Wood? Well, it's not what you think it is. No, but The Wood is a movie that stars Omar Epps, Taye Diggs, and Richard T. Jones. And they were 3 boys who grew into men in Inglewood, which is where the wood comes from. Inglewood, California. And throughout the movie, you get flashbacks of the first crushes and stupid bets that teenage boys make and getting cold feet at the altar. This movie is well done all around, in my opinion. It isn't some movie that, every line is something that's like, oh, that's a quote, oh, that's a bar, oh, this is going to be talked about in history. That's one of the best Shakespearean type. No, this isn't that. But as a black man who does love film and black culture, I feel like this movie is a perfect example of how black films could and should be made and be talked about. What I love most about it is I feel like in watching it recently, it's a love letter to black boyhood, to growing up, to friendship, figuring out who you are while your voice is still cracking, when you're hitting puberty like Peter Brady, and trying not to mess up your hair before the big dance, who you're going to take to the dance. That's what this is all about. And before getting into all the specifics and unpacking certain scenes and things like that, I want to talk about, it's worth noting, how The Wood fit into the broader landscape of black cinema. Like I was saying, this came out in the late 90s, 1999 to be exact. And through the 90s, there were a lot of popular films about young black men and women, but they were heavy on the traumatic shit, right? Heavy on the crime and the violence. Great movies, but you think of the classics like Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, or Juice. These movies are movies that we all love, we all quote to a certain extent, but at the same time, they were largely focused on the struggle to escape violent environments or the violence that happens to black kids growing up in these communities. And don't get me wrong, those things do happen sometimes. That's not all that happens in the hood, in the wood, and things like that. And I appreciate how The Wood did something refreshingly different to me. It portrayed black male friendship and living life as a youth without centering it on crime, without centering it on going to jail and singing songs from the prison yard. And that's not all that needs to be shown. As one person noted when it came out, The Wood showed a bond between black men that isn't defined by gang life or drugs. It's a nuanced study of friendship and coming of age that Hollywood, even today, kind of still struggles to capture like this, decades later. Roger Ebert, I'm sure y'all know him, right? He picked up on this in a review that he did when it came out. And what he said was, It seems like Hollywood is incapable of imagining young black men who are not in violence, drugs, and trouble. And he praised the Wood for being exactly what it was. It was a sweet, lighthearted comedy that showed the real. They didn't always make the best decisions, right? Like the bets and the dares and stupid stuff like that. But it was honest, and it was also lighthearted. And these were middle-class black teens, right? They always show the teens who are living in the projects. And like I said, that's all real too. But just like with Forever, there are black families who are well off. There are families who aren't rich, but they have enough to get by. They don't need help from the system and things like that. There's levels to blackness, and I think all the levels should be shown. That's what I appreciate about this film. It made the point to say that this too is also a valid black experience. And when it first came out, I obviously didn't see it in theaters in '99, right? But I saw it on VHS when Mom's got it and brought it to the crib. But when this came out, it was a mixed reception from the audiences, black and white. You know, some people loved the charm and some people found it conventional or just enough. So it ended up getting about a 61% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And what's notable to me is how audiences, but especially black viewers, embraced it, and it went to become one of those movies that we watch at the house and we pass to our cousins and our friends, and we quote the lines to each other in everyday life. You just walk up to somebody and be like, "Hey, Mackin, Hangin, Mackin, Hangin," or even the lines that aren't so cute and sweet, like Stacy when he saw the boys at the gas station and he was like, "Hey, y'all must be going to the dance, huh?" Because remember them motherfucking dances, boy. Like, it's the beauty and the honesty and the realness, because that's how we talk. That's how we speak. And I was just like, man, it's good to have a movie that no matter how old it is, no matter how long ago it came out, this movie gets it. The director gets it. And let's talk about the mastermind, Rick Famuyiwa. Rick Famuyiwa is a filmmaker, and his journey into filmmaking is one that I found very interesting because it wasn't what he set out for. Like, I've heard the story time and time again where you go into college looking for one thing and then you find that spark and it changes your whole future. It changes the way you see life for the rest of your life. And that's kind of what happened to Rick. So he was born to Nigerian parents and they raised him in Inglewood, California, hence the Wood. And he wasn't always planning to be a filmmaker. So he started out at USC on a pre-law track. And it's funny because he said he was pre-law and he was playing basketball. And those were his two outs that he was trying to focus on. So the story goes, one day he had to choose a fine arts elective, right? So he was just like, okay, I'll take this film class. I can watch movies and get credits for it. Cool. He took this film class, not thinking much of it. And he said by his second week in the class, he felt like his whole mindset changed. And what started off as him wanting to just watch films and get credit for it became a love and a deeper appreciation for cinema and the behind the scenes and different directing styles of movies that he had seen and heard about growing up, but never really focused on from that kind of lens. And it changed his life. And he ended up double majoring in film production and critical studies at USC's legendary School of Cinematic Arts, which we'll talk about later on. He had a short film that came out in 1997 called Blacktop Lingo, and that was all about life as a young black man navigating through LA, and that landed him in the Sundance Directors Lab. And from there, he began expanding his ideas and talking about movies that he wanted to make that were bigger budget. And then from there, the Wood started taking shape. And it's funny because he said at the time he was writing it, he was working retail at the Beverly Hills Nike Town. And he was just scribbling out scenes in between shifts. And that just shows you that when you want it, the grind is real. You know, you always find time for the things that mean the most to you, or at least you should, because you'd be surprised where they can take you. And when he made The Wood, it's amazing to think about, but he was only 24 years old. 24 when the movie was made in 99. And just think about that. Most of us at 24 were barely figuring out if the direct deposit was hitting the right way, or what kind of clothes to put with these clothes in our room. And this man's over here getting MTV Films to greenlight a semi-autobiographical script about him growing up in Inglewood, California. That's crazy to think about, but that just shows when you have a passion, there is no limit. And like I said, it was semi-autobiographical, so it wasn't his life story or scene for scene, this is what happened to him. It was loosely based on his own friendships and his own awkward moments, first kiss and things like that. And just natural boyhood stuff. In that, though, he crafted a film that showcases a young boy, young black men, as much more than just a punchline or a statistic. You know, we get to see them being goofy, getting into trouble, grabbing booty, falling in love. You know, it was just these boys trying to make it through adolescence, but with some kind of dignity. And the tone was gentle, it was humorous, it was honest, it was just real all around. And that's what Rick is kind of known for, because he didn't just do this movie. Rick, if you don't know him, Google him and look at his credit list. Look at his IMDb. And you see his style in all of his work. He later did Brown Sugar and Dope, which was also critically acclaimed. But also don't sleep on his sci-fi era, because he's been getting more into that bag lately. And he also directed several episodes of The Mandalorian. And I haven't watched that, but I've heard the show. It's fantastic. So if that's your bag, check it out and check out some of Rick's other work, because you will be surprised and your mind will be blown. Like, he is fantastic. And the beauty of it all is, he said he just wanted to show in this movie black kids being black kids. That's it. That's the punch. He didn't want them to be villains. He didn't want them to be victims of police brutality or victims of life just hitting you in the ass every time. He wanted it to be real while also being warm. Not some Hollywood tragedy that's just soaked heavily in trauma, because we got enough of that and we keep getting more of that. But anyway, that's another story. He just wanted to show these young boys making bets about getting the most phone numbers, getting fresh, and trying to make it through puberty without getting beat down like Mike did. But Mike kind of had it coming. So let that be a lesson to you all. If your friends tell you to go over there and grab a booty, don't do it. Because she might have a brother named Stacy who's a blood. And when he come, he gonna kick your ass. So you can bet on that if you want to. But I suggest you not do that. One cool thing about this, I was thinking about it last night, the tie-ins to the UCS Film School pipeline. Because we had Rick, for example, and we also have Charles Burnett. We got Ryan Coogler, who is probably my favorite right now. And it's something about the way that they tell stories that's layered and it's grounded in a place of identity, right? But it also dares you to stretch into something bigger, use your imagination to create a world that's bigger, that's more than just what's on the surface level. Ryan Coogler is just killing the game right now. He gave us Fruitvale Station, Creed, which Creed 1 is one of my favorite movies of all time. The way it's put together, I was skeptical at first, but when I get to that, I'll talk about it more. It's just a fantastic piece of work. And of course, notably the Black Panther. I mean, there's nothing more to say. Black Panther. And the film that took me by storm, Sinners. I mean, just phenomenal work. And you can see how Ryan's work is growing piece by piece every movie. And I gotta say, man, it's something in those USC film school walls, because like Rick with the Wood, it's a movie that, like I said, is one of my favorites all time and is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. And then Ryan and his movies, Charles and his films, it's just fantastic pieces of black work in cinema. And we have all these different genres, right? But they're all deeply personal, and they're all related to the culture in some kind of way, or have pieces of our culture in some kind of way. And it's not just the hood stuff, you know, but they show the heart. And these dudes, they just tell black stories with specificity and style and range. And they do it without shouting. You know, they just let the work speak. They're not the most vocal people, but when you ask, they'll tell you. But besides that, they're chill. They're laid back. They're letting the work speak for itself and letting you enjoy it if that's your cup of tea. Quiet Storm filmmakers, right? Let's call it that. I like that. That's the vibe. And that's one that I'll always ride for. So shout out to them for being who they are and giving us these fantastic pieces of work that they have. A thing that I appreciate about what he did with The Wood is, whether you grew up in LA, Chicago, Detroit, Tallahassee, it don't matter. We all had that first dance, the sweaty palms, or is my breath okay? Like, we all had those moments. And The Wood captured that with so much honesty, man, and heart. Like, I was watching it last night for the 17,000th time, right? But I was smiling and laughing pretty much the whole way through. I gotta say, my favorite character now as an adult, because of his timing and everything, is probably Stacy. Stacy was pretty funny and a great actor. Shout out to DeAndre. But just a fantastic movie, man. One thing that Rick spoke about is how Inglewood, when he was growing up, wasn't the war zone that people made it out to be. Obviously, there was some crime here and there, but it wasn't just crime. There were gangs around, but he had friends who helped him tell his story in a different way. They weren't caught up in that street life. They were just black kids being who they were, having fun, cracking jokes, and just enjoying everyday life in a real way that was real black. And I appreciate that. All right, we're here. We got to talk about one of the scenes that's, I'd say, the most iconic in this film. And it's hilarious, it's uncomfortable, but it's very real, especially for a 13, 14-year-old boy at that time. And that is the grab her booty dare that Roland and Slim did to Mike. So here's the scene. You got young Mike, fresh from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He likes sports. And he's just trying to survive at this new school, this junior high, with these two kids he just met who he thinks are going to be his lifelong friends. And they end up being that. But he's just trying to make it. And there's this girl who, talk about that for a second. When they filmed the movie, she was actually 28. Melinda Williams played Alicia, and in this scene she was supposed to be a 13 or 14-year-old, but surely, let's go with it, she looked young. It's just funny because when they cast him, the guy that played Mike, Sean Nelson, was 17, but he turned 18 before they started filming. So I guess, you know, the scenes with him and Alicia weren't that weird because he was 18, but Just funny to think about. But in this scene, you got Mike, Roland, Slim, and they're on the playground. It's probably recess, something like that. And there's this girl, and Roland and Slim are looking at her. And then Mike is looking at her, and they're talking about her butt, right? Like boys do. He's talking about how that is soft like a Twinkie. Just crazy stuff that I'm laughing because I'm thinking about myself when I was 13 or 14. And without saying too much, this is a pretty accurate depiction of just boys being dumb, young and dumb. You know, it's a tale as old as time. Boys will be boys, and that was them in this scene. So Slim, he dares Roland to grab her booty, and then Roland said, "Nah, I dare you to do it." And then he looked at Mike with like a sneaky face and said, "Hey, yo, Mike, go grab Alicia's booty." And everybody was like, "What? Nah." And then he's like, they're showing you the time it was. It was supposed to be 1986. He was like, "I will give you $1." And looking at it now, because obviously hindsight is 2020, right? $1 doesn't sound like enough to get in the kind of trouble he might get in, and did get in, for grabbing her butt. He said, "I'll give you $1 if you go and do it." And then Mike is like, "All right, man, it's a bet." And the scene, this is where the cinematography comes into play, because it slows down, right? And they use a different kind of camera shot to capture the moment that he's trying to grab her butt. And you have Omar Epps' voice in the background talking about the scenario and giving you a play-by-play of what he was thinking at that time. So Sean Nelson, the character playing the young Mike, he's just like circling her, trying to figure out how he's going to do it. And they have Roland and Slim in the background, where it's like faded, but you can still see them back there. Gorgeous shot. And it's like on the camera that's kind of like pixelated and grainy for the, I'm assuming, 1980s effect, right? And they have this music playing that's it's like her butt, because she was wearing red shorts, right? It was like her butt was like a target, and Mike Wood was the bull about to go and hit the target. So they're playing the music, and it's like speeding up, and it's in slow-mo still, and Mike is just like licking his lips, and she just playing jump rope, not paying him no mind. And they keep zooming the camera in on her, and then back on him, and then her, and then back on him. And now he's running slow-mo, getting closer, getting closer, getting closer. And then the music speeds up, and he tries to tap her butt and keep running. But as soon as he taps her butt, she stops playing with the rope, punches him in the shoulder, in the face, and he just like running back. And Roland and Slim are laughing now, because the music is now off. So it's just them laughing and the voices and the sound effects. And he ran back to Roland and Slim, and he holding his eye, and they're just laughing, like they're in tears laughing at him. And he's like, "Man, give me my $1, man." But while all that's happening, she's walking up, and she does not look happy. So she's walking up, and she told him, "Are you crazy? You don't know me. Don't you ever put your stinking hands on me again." And then she's like, "Oh, and I will tell my brother." Now that's one of those lines that, just thinking about it from the perspective, if you know a girl that has a brother, and y'all were like in school, even if the brother was like somebody who wasn't that scary, if he was older, in your mind he was always the big bad wolf, or the big scary big brother who you didn't want to smoke with, especially in like 5th, 6th, 7th grade, right? And then earlier they were talking about guys who were in the gangs, the Bloods and the Crips, and they were like, "Yo, remember that talk we had about Bloods and Crips, man? Well, that nigga's a Blood." And he was picking her up from school, and she said, "He gonna kick your ass." And when she said that, Mike's face was like, "Oh, damn, what did I just get myself into? What did they get me into?" Because they knew her brother was a Blood. How can y'all didn't tell me before I even did that you know, her brother is like about that street life? And then he was like, "Damn, Now I'm thinking, why they ain't grab her butt? Which, duh, of course, they knew there would be some consequences and repercussions from doing that, but they knew Mike didn't know. So young Mike did it. He took one for the team, and now the clock is ticking. So counting down for school to be over. And of course, when you're about to have a fight and something's going on, that clock is moving rapidly. So the time is on point, and Mike is like sweating bullets now. He's like, maybe she forgot. Maybe she was just mad in the moment, but she's not serious about that, right? So he looks at her, and she just does like the "you're dead" sign, and then he's just like, well, this is it. Bell rings, class is over. And Roland and Slim are like, hey man, I'm sorry. I don't want to tell you, but hey, you better run. You're a pretty fast dude. You better put the pedal to the metal and run the F out of here. Like, that's all we can tell you. So they go outside and they're scoping the scene, making sure nothing's going on, nothing looks too crazy. They look around the back, check the parking lot. Didn't see anybody out there. But the problem was Alicia and Stacy were coming from behind them with a big group of kids. Because of course, when you're about to have a fight, everybody in the school wants to watch. All the kids from every grade just shows up magically out of nowhere, right? So he turns Mike around and he just like, it's my sister. She telling me you can't keep your hands still and effing self. And then Mike is just like, no, I think she purdy. And I'm just like, out of all things you can say in that moment, what your brain immediately went to is, I think she purdy. And then Stacy pushes Mike, and then Roland and Slim surprisingly got Mike's back, step up. Stacy pushed them both one by one. And then he's like, y'all want some of me? They said, man, yeah. I mean, I guess so. And then young Mike showing the balls in that moment. It's like, nah, man, this is my fight. And then Stacy's like, what? And then Mike, surprisingly, when I first saw it, I was like, ooh. Mike punched Stacy in the face. And Stacy, like we said, he was the blood, he was the street dude. So he's like, this little punch me in my mouth? So obviously he starts beating up on Mike, right? Like pounding him. And then Alicia breaks it up because she said, all right, that's enough. You're going to hurt him. That's too much. And they go away. And Roland and Slim are like, is it worth it? Was it worth it getting beat down? And this little fool is going to look at them, look at her walking away, and say, yeah. And I was just like, that just showed the age and the, growing up thing more and more, because ain't no way I'm going to get beat up like that for trying to touch somebody when they shouldn't have been touched in the first place. And that's one of the things that Rick was talking about in an interview. He was saying that scene is actually a real scene, and that was him. It was awkward, but that's how it was growing up, and especially as a black boy trying to navigate the sometimes toxic masculinity before we even know what that means. And he didn't glorify it, right? He's like, I'm just using this to show how young boys sometimes do dumb shit to impress each other. And it's not out of malice, or they're just thinking about having fun. It's from a place of not really knowing and confusion all wrapped in one. And then Mike learned something from that. And hopefully so did you watching it. Even the way that the adult version of Mike, like I said, Omar Epps in the background was talking about the scene and how he narrated it. You can tell he was kind of embarrassed, because self-awareness is key. And in that scene and plenty of other scenes, you kind of get a chance to revisit your own childhood without judgment, but with reflection and with a new lens and with 2020 eyes, and say, man, my how times have changed, my how I've grown. Hopefully, God forbid, some of y'all haven't grown up, but hopefully if you listen to this podcast, you're an adult who knows right and wrong and what you can and can't do, should and shouldn't do, because that's how you build generational understanding. And I feel like The Wood showed that without hitting you over the head with the deep message. It's just good vibes, truth, and growth. And we love growth. Another scene that had me hollering, and it still has me hollering to this day whenever I see it, is the infamous, we just came to get some Tic Tacs at the corner store where we got Roland, Mike, and Slim leaving the school dance to go and get some breath mints so they don't, have stinky breath, because the goal for tonight is another bet. Whoever gets the most phone numbers at the dance get $1. $1 is the golden prize, the golden goose of this movie. So they're outside smelling their breath, and they're just like, damn, you know what? Let's go and get something from the store. Let's go get some gum, some Tic Tacs or something like that. So they go into the store, have like a whole spiel on which one is the best for the dance, and how you suck, never chew, like all these things, all these moments. But apparently they took too long because somebody comes in and robbed the place, and they're scared, so they all run to the back. And there's two guys robbing the place, right? One is wearing a black sweater, one's wearing gray. And at one point, one of the guys is gone. So the boys are getting scared. They're like, oh shit, yeah, about to come kill us, we're about to get shot. And Slim was like shaking up the soda. He doesn't notice the guy is behind him now. So the guy brings them to the front. And then the person who's at the front says, oh man, they ain't nothing. They go to school with my sister. And Mike, again, Mike's like, at that time, he was so socially awkward, and you could tell he didn't have friends growing up. Because he's just like, Stacy? And it's like, dude, he robbing the place. And don't say his name while he got a gun up to the cashier trying to rob the place. Situational awareness is a huge thing, and Mike in that moment did not have any of it. But he did a little bit later. So Stacy is just with them, and he's just like, y'all must be going to the dance, huh? Niggas, remember them motherfucking dances? Like, this movie is just filled with lines and scenes that just make you smile and feel warm because you've seen that, or you've been in situations similar to that, and it's just fun to see from a not so traumatic lens that we usually get it from. So they're in there with Stacy, and he's like, let me give y'all a ride to the dance. That's the least I could do. So they get in Stacy's car. He's taking them to the dance. But the problem is, they're all in this car. They smoking weed. Well, him and Boo are smoking weed. But they have 2 loaded guns in the car. Doesn't sound too bad. Like, it's just 2 guns in the car. Oh, sure. But the cops get behind them. The lights come on. They pull them over. And even back in the 80s, like before all the, George Zimmerman and things that happened in the 2000s and 2010s, even back in the 80s, there was still police brutality, and black people were afraid to get stopped by the cops because that's just a real scenario for us. So the cops are behind it, but now it's even worse because they just robbed a little corner store, and you got 2 loaded guns in the car. You got these kids in the back seat just trying to go to the dance, and everybody panicking. Boo trying to get the smoke out, opening windows. All this stuff is going on. And they had a broken tail light on the car. So that's the reason they got pulled over. They had a broken tail light. And they get pulled out of the car, fed up to the wall, lock your fingers together behind your head. And there's another officer searching the car. Now Mike sees him searching the car, and he getting closer with a gun at, because the gun, one of them was on the floor on the passenger seat, and it was in clear view. I don't know how he didn't see it anyway, but movie magic, I guess. So it's in clear sight. And Mike sees it, and he just starts to cough. And they're like, what's going on over there? He's like, I'm sorry, it's my allergies, sir. And Stacy's like, what's wrong with you? And he looked back and see the gun, and he's like, oh shit, all right, cool. Now, by the grace of God, they got let go because the cops got a call about a robbery a couple of miles away. The same one that they just committed is what got them off. So they go away, and then Stacy's like, you know what? Mike is the one that not only stood up to fight me, but now he see the cop about to find a gun, and he makes a gesture to get the cop away from the gun and to look up and, you know, have it to where he didn't find it. So shout out to the little homie Mike. And he got some respect for him now. So he's like, you get in the front, let's roll. When they get to the dance, he's just like, all right, listen, I apologize for beating your ass the other day, but I was just protecting my sister. And as a brother, that's valid. I will go to war for all of my sisters, older, younger, it don't matter. So if she say he put his hands on me, I understand why he was like, okay, I got to go kill this little dude because that's my girl. Don't mess with my sister like that, period. So I understood both sides. I understood being young and dumb and liking a girl and doing something stupid, but also understand being a big brother who's like, nah, I don't play that. But now they have a mutual respect. And he's like, you like my sister, don't you? Okay, well, how about this? She got a favorite song, If This World Were Mine by Luther Vandross, which is a classic track. And he's like, if they play that song, I want you to get you a dance. And Mike is just like, I guess. Okay, cool. Thanks. He goes there. They're at the dance. Yada, yada, yada. All this stuff ensues. And last song of the night. Guys, grab one of these fine ladies and get close. If This World Were Mine comes on, Mike is just like, oh my God, that's it. That's the song. So he's scanning the whole room trying to find Alicia, and he sees her in the back corner by herself. Okay, this is the moment. Go up to her, talk to her, get that dance. And he gets the dance, gets her phone number eventually, and Stacy is like a proud dad just in the car like, that's my boy, yeah. And I just love that because it showed the nuance and it showed the levels to Stacy. Yeah, he's this gangbanger, he's this dude who, you know, some would say the troublemaker, but he also has a heart, right? He didn't have to be that nice to Mike. And I think that whole thing gave Mike more confidence to become who he eventually became in the movie. And that peacemaker, you know, mediator of the group who was just that lovable dude. He became that, I think, with the confidence from these moments and the growing up and putting it all together in that circle. So I appreciate that scene, and I appreciate the character Stacy. He wasn't in the whole movie every scene, but the scenes that he was in were just phenomenal. Great acting. And what's genius about this is, like I said, that whole getting stopped by the cops thing, that could have turned into a tragedy. It usually does, right? But he let the tension rise, and then he's like, you know what, y'all? Nah, let's breathe. Because life isn't always one or the other. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's funny, and sometimes you can be scared to death. It's dumb and dangerous. That's the reality of the world. Duality. And he gives you the full spectrum of black youth without falling into those tropes. Like I said before, that scene showed that black kids walk that line every day in every neighborhood, especially neighborhoods like that one. And you're one step from freedom to fear, from joy to jeopardy. It's all a line sometimes. And you see it in Mike's face, like that look of, I just wanted to dance with Alicia. I got to dance with Alicia. I got her phone number. This has been a crazy night, but you know what? It's all worth it in the end. One of my favorite segments that we do here is talking about the soundtrack, the visuals, and just the mood that they set for the movie. And The Wood had that kind of golden hour glow to it. Like, for example, if you rewatch a movie and it feels like somebody shot it through a jar of honey or some summer sweat, and it's just like melting off the screen, right? That's what The Wood felt like. It felt so warm. Even the scary scenes where, you know, you think they might get like shot by the cops and stuff like that. There was a warmth throughout the whole movie. The thing I noticed the most was in the scene where they were supposed to be in the 80s and in middle school and high school. One thing with the camera is they had like a filter over those scenes. And with that filter, you can tell it was shot on film. It was a filter where it gave them that grainy effects look to give that look of, okay, this is not present day, this is in the past. And when they did every flashback, it had that same grain. And I appreciate that detail because some movies just like show old scenes and you can tell it's like it was shot in 2025. There's no effort to make it seem like it was shot in that time period. 99 wasn't that far from 1986. It was far enough to where it should look different. And they made it look different. So I appreciate and respect that aspect of it. The cinematographer, his name is Jeffrey Kimball. And funny enough, he shot action movies like Top Gun and True Romance. But he brought a softness to this in a way that felt natural. And it felt cozy, it felt comfortable. Every scene in the past had that filtered haze to it, and it was like your memory makes things prettier than they really were, if that's how it was. Like the light hit their skin different in the flashbacks, and it was intimate. I also appreciate how the director and the cinematographer made sure that these black actors, they had a glow. Like they all looked beautiful. The chocolate skin with the melanin was popping in this movie. Even Lisa Ray is light skinned, but like everybody looked fantastic from head to toe. Tamala Jones, all these people, men and women, had this glow to them. And even when they were being goofy or getting into trouble, it felt like you were watching an intimate romance in a way. It just all felt like a breath of fresh air. That's how I would describe it. This movie is a breath of fresh air. And I feel like that was intentional. The slower camera pans, the soft focus, the natural light. There was nothing slick or glossy. It was just honest. And it was soft. Now let's talk about the soundtrack. The soundtrack was grown and sexy. It was fun. You know, you got songs like Can I Kick It, Crack Our Quest, Doo-Wop from Lauryn Hill, Running by Pharcyde. But my favorite song is the song they played at the wedding scene at the end. It's Crave by Mark Dorsey. And Crave is just a typical 90s love song, but it's just fantastically sung and beautiful in the lyrics. Obviously, you got Roland and Lisa getting married and all the trials and tribulations they went through. Will he not? Like, where's he at? He finally made it. They're getting married. He loves her. She loves him. And they got that song playing. And you got Roland looking at Lisa, Mike looking at Alicia, who's played by Sanaa Lathan. Which, by the way, little tangent. It was funny because they were like, I think Sanaa was a year older than Melinda Williams at the time this movie came out. But the fact that, you know, they're both black actresses, but Melinda was like a chocolate color when they were younger, which gorgeous woman. But Sanaa looks nothing like her. And it's not the same complexion at all. So when she was the older version, I was just like, as a kid, I was just like, who is she supposed to be? And then when I got older, I was like, They could have let her play the same character. Like, they could have let Melinda play the older Alicia. But I think that was around the time where Omar was dating Sanaa. I said, okay, how can we get her into here and let their chemistry work? And boy, did it work, because the camera shots they were in for like those two scenes, you could see the chemistry oozing off the screen. Like, it was evident. So I guess from that standpoint, it makes sense. But back to the soundtrack, you got You're My Latest, My Greatest Inspiration, Teddy Pendergrass, all this fantastic music. And it just shows you that In my opinion, the 70s, 80s, and 90s was the best time for R&B, for hip hop, especially the 90s. Like, it was just a different vibe. And you can tell that they didn't just rush these songs and put them all in like a random playlist. There was some craft and some time put into the song selections and the choices, and even the songs that played in each scene. Like the song that played in the beginning, for example, sets the mood for the movie. You got Back in the Day by Ahmad, and that's the first song that plays after the Jerome, put on that Bobby Womack. And they show the cameras going around Los Angeles. It's just gorgeous shots and perfect song placement that just puts you in the mood to be in LA, watching somebody grow up, remembering times when you were growing up way back when. And I love that feeling. That's what I love to talk about. That's what the cinematic soul is built on. You know, music as a memory, sound as a story. And when it's done right, I feel like you get pulled into the movie more and more because you feel it in your chest. Those emotions come through your soul. And that's how it was meant to be. That's how the film going experience should be. As I wrap up this journey through the wood, I just sit here with this warm feeling about me. Like, I'm just sitting here like, man, this is that kind of feeling you get when you spend time with an old friend and you reminisce about back in the day, what you did when y'all were younger. And that's the magic of this film. It's an ode to Black boyhood and growing up and cherishing where you come from, the stories that you will live with for the rest of your life, the friendships that you made over the years, how these goofy kids can navigate the trials of first crushes and mischief and manhood, all put in one. And let's not forget how they had a subtle celebration of Black love through Alicia's character and how she grew and how she learned to love Mike. And how you have those crushes who, you know, y'all were younger back then, but sometimes that love never fades. And you see that person, it's always like the first time again. And you just have that gaze at each other and it's like magic. It's like clockwork. I feel like it all underscores that the wood is about learning to love, but also about learning how to be friends and learning how important real friendship is amongst men and women. And by the end of the movie, you know, we've Mackin and Hangin, but you understand and you see that growth, the maturity and the love that's in between all of that. Roland chooses to commit to Lisa. Mike and Alicia have a heart-to-heart, and I think he ends up going to New York with Alicia. And Slim, I mean, every friend group has a Slim, right? The guy who is just like cracking jokes, but in the moment, you know, he feels it too. He's there. He's a part of it. And critically, while The Wood didn't really, you know, win any Oscars or any awards like that, I feel like the cultural impact is more than enough. It's more giving and understanding. Because we have that deep and lasting love for this movie, or at least I do. And it's one of those films that if you mention it to any Black person of a certain age, hopefully their face light up and they'll just be like, oh yeah, that's that movie. Tic Tacs. Or, you know, just saying any line from the movie, because it's one of those rite of passage films. You know, it's something that you watch with your cousins or your college roommates and you just laugh and bond over it. And I feel like it stands alongside the movies like Love and Basketball, Boys in the Hood, Brown Sugar, stuff like that, as part of that late 20th century, I feel like golden era of Black cinema. It just gave us various images of ourselves and showed all the different aspects of Black culture, not just the gang culture, But the fun side, the loving side, the goofy side, it showed all of it. And rewatching it now, 26 years after its release, I'm struck by how well it holds up. Because some movies from those times, you watch them nowadays through our, fully grown and developed lens, hopefully, and you're just like, ooh, that didn't stick. I have those thoughts a lot with movies, and I appreciate with this one. I didn't feel that way. I watched this and I still enjoyed it from start to finish. Every scene, every song, it just felt natural, and the heart still hits. The humor still lands. The jokes are timeless. It reminds me of the days where grandma and mom playing music in the background, everybody just vibing out, having fun, from Luther to Earth, Wind and Fire, and just how music and memories are one. They're all connected. As a lifelong lover of cinema, especially black cinema, I want to give The Wood and Rick Famuyiwa a hearty and a heartfelt thank you. I appreciate you for the laughs, for the lessons, the nostalgia, the love. And thank you all for listening. If you made it all the way through the whole episode, I appreciate you, because movies like this is why I made this podcast. The way they make me feel, I'm sure some of you feel. And I want to share that love with you all with conversations, not just breaking down every scene or things I hate, that's cool. But I feel like these directors and these actors need to get their flowers, and I'm here to give it to them all because I appreciate them all. Rick, Omar, Tay, Richard, Tamala, Melinda, Sanaa, thank you all, and I appreciate you all for making this magical movie. So that brings us to the end of our conversation. If you want to talk more about it, you can follow me on Threads at Cinematic Soul Pod or at EB Knowing. Again, that's EBEKNOWING. And also follow the Instagram page at Cinematic Soul Pod. Again, that's at Cinematic Soul Pod. Thank y'all for listening. And until next time, stay black, stay magical, and keep the soul in cinema alive. Peace and love.
The girlie is warm. Time to make my move. So gently I kiss her, twist her in her ear, and tell her that I miss her. She might try to pop that boyfriend jump, but I don't really care because I know he's a punk. I'll stop him like a roach if he tries to approach. He can't get close cause I'm the one who wrote the book of romance. So come on, take a chance. You don't need a long look. All you need is a